Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We're digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. We'd love to hear where you think we got it right, where you think we don't know what we're talking about. You can do that on unsilentpodcast.com or Rumble or other social media channels where there's comments allowed. So, Brian, there's some changes in the atmosphere again this week, and some long-term ones.
Yeah, so I'm going to share a video that is Gavin Newsom and Charlie Kirk. So Gavin Newsom, obviously everyone will be able to look up and see he's the governor of California, has been for, 5-10 years, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what their rules are and how long he can be governor, but it seems like forever.
Yeah.
And Charlie Kirk, how would you describe Charlie Kirk?
Charlie Kirk is one of sort of the new young guns of conservative activism and commentary. Very well respected, very smart, and has really made a name for himself in conservative circles, sort of redefining what modern conservatism looks like.
Yeah, I would say that he's probably the guy, if not one of a handful of guys, who really kind of made his bones in that sphere through the college rank, college speaking tours and things like that. He was the guy that would go to colleges and speak on campus, and there'd be protests and things like that. But I think the net result is he prompted some pretty good conversation, and I wouldn't go so far as to say like guys like him are why young people are turning out to be more conservative. I tend to think it's more just their parents are not, so they're doing the opposite. But right. I certainly think that he helped grease his skids for that kind of thing, along with many others as well. So you've got a very liberal California, arguably the most liberal state in the union, and a very conservative guy. And I want to share, this is just a quick excerpt from a conversation they had. I think this is Gavin Newsom maybe launched a new podcast and they're talking there, or maybe Gavin Newsom was on Charlie Kirk's. I don't know exactly where they're at, but the conversation is the important part here, not necessarily where they were. So
wakes up at 6 last night trying to put my son to bed. He's like, "No, Dad, what time? What time's Charlie gonna be here? What time?" And I'm like, "Dude, you're in school tomorrow." He's 13. He's like, No. This morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, "I'm coming." I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is,
you canceled school for like 2 years. One day.
The point is the point, which is you are making a damn dent.
Thank you. I'm kidding.
When you go to these college campuses, I love watching your TikTok, which is next level. And clearly, that's expressed by my 13-year-old son.
I want to meet this guy.
Yeah, I actually
He's coming to a Turning Point event this summer, Tampa, Florida, Student Action Summit.
I actually am by the way, if
you should be concerned.
But let me say, here is why I'm concerned, because you have expressed that I should be concerned as a Democrat, that we're getting clobbered.
Yes.
That you've figured something out.
It's not me. The president first deserves the credit.
But why? No, hold on. You were at this before Trump was Trump.
I know, but
he was a Democrat back in 2011
and 12. The president deserves huge credit. And I just have to say that as an obligatory thing, because without him, our movement would be small. And you can appreciate that in politics. You have to appreciate the person who is the catalyst.
For you, that's what you sort of attached an identity.
It was also just the catalyst. It was a cultural moment that just opened us up.
So that seems pretty fascinating to me that Gavin Newsom, this, again, some would say ultra liberal, ultra progressive governor, his own 13-year-old son is a fan of the guy that he's ideologically kind of at war with.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, a couple of things that occur to me from that is one, Gavin Newsom has seen the light, not in terms of, I don't believe that Gavin Newsom all of a sudden is going to become a rock-ribbed, Reaganite conservative. I don't believe that for a second. But I also, he wants to keep his job. He wants the job of the presidency.
He wants to be president,
Yeah, I mean, he's his entire life has been preparing him for the presidency. So, and he realizes that he's not going to be there if he says that women can be beat up by men in sports. If he discounts everything that the conservative side says. I mean, talk about that. That was he was almost Gavin Newsom. Whenever I've seen him, I haven't thought of him as likable. he was kind of likable there. So
He's
it's like,
smarmy.
yeah,
Smarmy is the word I always think of when I think of him.
absolutely, the grease, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But in this clip, when he's having an honest back and forth with Charlie Kirk, I'm sure it's completely calculated. I'm sure the whole thing is designed for
Yeah.
effect, but it's smart. It's a smart effect. So that's success.
I think there's there's a bunch of things at play there, but the two that stand to me is, one, I think you're 100% right. He's done the political math, and he's determined that the path he was on, outwardly at least in his talking points, was not going to get him to the White House.
Yeah.
Right. And there's polls around that say Kamala Harris is the front runner. I think that's all nonsense.
No.
I think he's the guy to, like, it's his job to lose at this point. Right. Yep. So there's that, where he's got his political future he's making decisions based upon. But the second thing, I think that what stands to me, and maybe I'm being paranoid or biased or whatever, but I think for the young person, the young man, his son that they're talking about, the 13-year-old boy, I think that age group of young man especially has just decided, I don't want to be hated. I don't want to hate myself. I don't want to go through life where I'm the villain for something that happened centuries before I was born.
Right.
And the more you're going to tell me that I should hate myself because I should be less masculine, I should be less white, I should do all these things, I think they're just kind of giving their parents the middle finger.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and it does go to that point we've talked about a number of times, where the kids more identify with the grandparents than they do with the parents. And
I see this as no different than Jim Morrison having long hair, and his dad was an admiral in the Navy who probably complained to him all the time about "cut your hair, kid."
exactly.
I see this as kind of being similar to that, as far as just like your parents telling you should do things, and you're like, "Screw you, mom and dad. I'm going to do what I want." But also, I think that some people are demonstrating to them, you don't have to hate yourself, and of course they're going to gravitate to those people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a certain amount. I mean, you can look at certain things, regardless of how you're brought up, and say this is just wrong. You can look at a big dude with a beard competing in women's sports and think, regardless of what they're telling me, this is right, but it's just not right. It just doesn't work for me. So I think all of those things combined to bring about this sort of renaissance in conservatism in the youth, and there's sort of an inevitable pendulum swing in that direction anyway, that we expected to happen.
Yeah. Now, speaking of pendulum swings, we got to talk about the opposite one now. So I don't know, for the years 2012 through probably 2023, 2022, somewhere in there, Elon Musk was the guy in liberal circles. I mean, he arguably the guy at the tip of the spear of the electric car movement.
Yep.
The Tesla thing alone made him like the crown jewel of the liberal movement. It seems like
he was folk hero.
And folk hero, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. And now, next to Trump, he might be the most hated guy on the planet.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the around in Seattle, there's been a whole bunch of vandalism of Tesla dealerships. They're busting up EV charging stations. That's got to be really weird for a far left greenie to bust up a charging station. I mean, it's got to be some sort of cognitive dissonance going on there. But yeah, exactly. And it's fascinating to watch that transformation, even though everything that he's done. I mean, he's into rockets. He's got the Boring Machine Company. He's Tesla, obviously. Of course, it was really his takeover of X of Twitter that made him persona non grata among most of the people on the left.
Well, and the Doge thing certainly isn't helping.
No, Doge is, and it's funny to watch. So if you watch what he's doing with Doge, so it's like, why is Musk doing what he's doing? Well, some people are always a grifter. He's the richest guy in the world. He doesn't need your money. He could probably make more money working in his companies or starting, doing something else. So it's not because he needs money. He's already got all of it. He's got more than he and his family and his 10 generations could spend. So it's not money. Is it fame? Well, no, he was loved by everybody before he did this. So he sacrificed a lot of fame for that. So that's obviously not top on the list. He's opened himself up to all sorts of memes and attacks and all this. It really seems like this is a heartfelt enterprise for him. He really believes what he says about free speech. I mean, sometimes he says some weird things, but he really believes what he says about free
speech. He's a person.
Speech.
People say dumb things. I say dumb things all the time.
Well, yes, now we expect anybody in the public eye to not ever make any mistake in terms of what we think mistakes are. So,
well, it's funny you say that, because we just got to talk about how Gavin Newsom makes these decisions based on calculations that are not genuine.
Right.
So we as a society, we both want people to not say stupid things in public, but also be authentic.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Well, yeah. And see, this is where, let me digress into Trump for a minute on that. So, the Trump is exactly the opposite. Either he's 100% right on everything, he can do no wrong, he's playing chess at 10 levels deep, he's 10 moves ahead of you, or he's a complete moron that can't even tie his shoes without help. So, and like, I talk to people, well, what you hear about Trump did? Yeah, this that Trump did was good. This that Trump did, I didn't like at all. And it's like, what side are you on? I'm not on any side. I'm on the side of when he does something right, I like it, and when he does something wrong, I don't. It turns out it's the same standard I applied to Biden and Obama and Bush and Clinton and Bush and Reagan. It's just like, come on, guys. This cult of personality is just silliness. It just doesn't reflect how human beings operate in real. And it's only in this that we do this. It's only in these public figures that we do that. When it comes to people that we know, we make allowances for their foibles and for their mistakes, and thank God we do, or else we can never get along with anybody.
Yeah. I saw I didn't even think to save it. I should have, but it was a person on Twitter or X responding to somebody else who was saying, he's in there getting everybody's social security number because he wants to come after your money and like whatever. And they posted this thing. I haven't done the math to double check it, but it seems like it's probably pretty accurate. If you had been born the same day Jesus Christ was born and had been given $500,000 a day every day from that time to now, you wouldn't have as much money as Elon Musk. He's probably not doing this to go after your social security number to go get a $6,000 credit card and max it out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. So it seems like Musk is, whatever you say about him, he's an authentic player, and he's attempting to make his adopted country a better place. I mean, whether you
and again, he's willing to take the tomatoes. He's willing to stand up and say, I know you don't like it, and arguably he's built his entire success around this exact posture, which is this is the way we're going to do it, and I know you're not going to like it sometimes, but that's what we're doing anyway. We're moving forward and making very rapid decisions.
Right.
Some would say that's one of the most critical things you can do as a business owner, is to be able to fail fast, make decisions fast, get action, just action.
Well, and that is
if it breaks some eggs along the way, you're going to get the omelet kind of a thing.
You're gonna break, and you will break some things along the way. That's move fast, break things. What they say in disruption, and you keep the things that work, and the things you don't, you just fail fast, and you're done with it. And that is really again the difference between where we're at now with the American government and where we have been in the past. Even with Republicans or Democrats, there was a tremendous amount of respect for institutional integrity and institutional legacy, and all these kinds of things that doesn't exist now. I mean, it hardly exists at all. It's really now a business. It's really more like America Inc. It's we're kind of like a business in the sense of we want results. We want them quickly. We're going to manage our expenses. We're going to manage our activities. Unproductive employees, you're gone, you're done. Whoever's going to stay is going to do these things to advance these agendas, the agenda that's set from the top. And if you work against them, if you work against the boss, you're fired. So so institution doesn't really play into that. And that is another part of this fourth turning era that we're in, is the collapse of the institutional respect, if you will. And all the institutions have fallen in terms of respect, none more than the government institutions.
Yeah, and I think when you and I agree with everything you just said. I think when you take that idea and marry it to how soft we've become and how adverse we are to difficulty, they kind of feed off each other.
Yes,
the institutions become corrupted and dysfunctional and things like that. But as long as there's no consequences for the populace, like, okay, we'll just say we have other things to worry about. But as soon as you try to change those institutions to make them more efficient or productive or whatever, well, wait a second. If that's going to create some hardship for somebody, like, well, whoa, we're out. And I think that's maybe part of the fourth turning is we hit a pinnacle where that's just not sustainable anymore.
Right, right, exactly. And it's so I guess it's inevitable that that's going to happen, and it's going. But it's also hard for people to understand. People have been around for a while. I listened to an interesting podcast recently where they were talking about how Trump is essentially breaking the international order, and one of the things that occurred to me is that a lot of the actions he's taking are actions that violate the international order for effect. So I'll give you an example. There was a resolution really recently at the UN about condemning Russia for the invasion of Ukraine, and the United States voted against that. And therefore, the conclusion was based on that snapshot in time that, oh well, Trump's in bed with Putin. Well, no, you're taking that as a snapshot into. First of all, voting for it, how many lives, Ukrainian lives, exactly would that have saved? Well, it wouldn't have saved any Ukrainian lives. It was purely symbolic. Now,
Yeah.
to my point of it's America Inc. Now, going into a negotiation, the first thing you go into for a negotiation doesn't mean you like the people you're negotiating with. You have a deal that you're trying to get done. And the first rule of trying to get a deal done with somebody is don't say things that make them mad to start with. Just go in. I mean, I don't think there's any illusion on Vladimir Putin's part that Trump loves him. I don't think there's, I mean,
Yeah.
he's not a stupid man. He's not an idiot. He's a bad person. He's not an idiot.
Right.
But at the same time, is there any benefit in a negotiation going into Putin a day after you have condemned him on the world stage? There's no benefit. There's zero benefit. It doesn't exist. And there was no benefit to doing that. But what happened in that UN vote and what happened with the people that responded to that UN vote was a judgment on the totality of the Trump plan based on a specific snapshot. Whereas, I mean, you've been in lots of negotiations in your career. I've been in plenty of them. And you go in and say, I can't go one penny lower. This is no possible way. It's my best and final offer. BAFO. It's the end of the story. And they come back and they say, no, there's no, and they give you their best and final. And eventually the two of you, they're completely adamant that you won't go one penny in a different direction, meet in the middle. That's how these things work among human beings. And that's what the institutions don't get.
So, some people have said, it's a good deal when both parties are unhappy.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's exactly it. And that's again, human nature.
I kind of liken it to, I had a neighbor once where we had a dispute over the fence line.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to call a surveyor to come out and like survey the thing. They wouldn't split the money, the cost of that for this. I had to front all the money for the surveyor to come out. And once the surveyor had come out, I had to go over and knock on the neighbor's door and say, hey, like, here's the lines they painted. You saw their truck here, like the whole thing.
Right.
So I could get the fence built where I needed it to. Had I went over and the first thing I said was, oh, by the way, your wife is fat, that conversation probably would not have went as well as if I said, hey, I hope you saw the truck here. I asked the guy to paint the thing so you could plainly see this. So you would know I didn't change anything. Like, that's how you do these things.
That's how you do negotiation. And see, this is a different mindset. This is a mindset that the institutionalists are unfamiliar with. And so therefore they take whatever they see him doing, whether it's when he says he's going to, take over Gaza and run the thing, which is probably not going to happen. He's basically, establishing an extreme negotiating position in order for Netanyahu and his government to be able to do something that otherwise the international community's over here. And no, well, we're not taking it from here. We're taking it from over. Trump wanted to do this. We're going to scale back Trump's radical proposal. We're just going to take over Gaza ourselves, or.
Okay. Well, if that's what you guys want, I guess I won't fight you on that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's
almost like that's where he wanted to land in the beginning, right?
Well, yeah, who knew? The guy's a billionaire because he's been negotiating for a while. So yeah, those are the things I think that are changes in the structure. And it's surprising to me, Brian, how few people seem to realize that, how few smart people seem to realize that. I'm listening to these foreign policy analysts who are talking about, well, based on the Trump vote, here's what we can expect. We can expect the Baltics to be invaded. We can expect Poland is next on the list. I had a talk with a friend of mine over in the Baltics a while back, somebody I do business with, and they said, does this mean mean that we're next? I said, no, this doesn't. Trump has not abandoned NATO. He's not gonna abandon NATO. That's not what's going on here. Basically, what he's saying is you can't have your pudding unless you eat your meat. How can you have your meat unless? How can you have your pudding? He's saying, no, you don't get this. But if you do this, you're going to get your pudding. Don't worry about it. Step up your spending. Do your part.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. It does surprise me that smart people don't realize this.
Yeah, I think one of the things for Kenny G to like maybe, and again, Kenny G's a guy we're talking to 60, 70, 90 years from now who will be looking back at this as he's maybe entering his own fourth turning in his own disruptive era, and also wondering what the hell we were thinking going through the crazy time we're going through, which I think we've just started seeing the beginnings of that. But one of the things to look out for is when people can't recognize these two things, that bad people can sometimes do good things and good people can sometimes do bad things.
Right.
When that nuance is lost, you know you're in trouble, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it comes back again, as all things do, to the human equation. If you treat people, I mean, we wouldn't have a lot of societal strife if, one, we knew how to negotiate, and two, we recognize that humans are humans. If those two things were the common experience, we would get along swimmingly. I mean, we could, you could even meet with people outside of your comfort zone, like, say the Russians, and what their interest. You could determine without saying that they're just the most noble people. This is the most noble government in the world, or this is something completely different. I think that's where all of these things go wrong, because we get so caught in our narratives. When the narrative it's like the narrative is spinning so fast that any facts that come in they just kind of bounce off of it, and that's really where we're at.
Well, I mean, when you've literally called the guy the worst thing you could arguably call somebody for a decade now, which is Hitler.
Right.
10 years of that just bombardment every night on the news, multiple times a day on social media, multiple conversations a week, probably for some factions of people, were Trump's Hitler, Trump's Hitler, Trump's Hitler, Trump's Hitler. Well, at some point, I got to think that that's going to build a wall around your psyche where it's no longer even plausible to acknowledge the guy might do something correct once in a while.
Right. Well, it becomes a personal affront to you that he says anything, because if Hitler said something, then that's personally offensive to me. Whatever, he'd say kittens are cute, but that you're an evil person for saying that. Well, just not because kittens aren't cute, because you're an evil person.
You're just saying that because you want to eat the kittens. Like you always gotta spin it to add the negative connotation to it, or the context, or justify why you can't go along with this thing that kittens are cute or whatever.
And that's how societies unwind. I mean, ultimately, that's how societies unwind, because
it's narcissism. They'd rather be right than successful. They'd rather their point be the correct one and the whole ship go down than the whole ship stay afloat and even like succeed and then be proven wrong. Like that's and I don't mean them, I mean us, all of us. We all have this, right?
Exactly. Mutually assured destruction. No, that's true.
So what do you think? So if I got this wrong, you know the news way better than me, but I heard something like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and some cohort of countries over there said, you know what, we don't want the United States in Gaza. We're going to go ahead and pony up like $100 billion, and we're going to go ahead and fix it. Did that happen? Like 66 billion, or
I think there's
186 billion, or some crazy number.
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but yes, I hear them all talking about it, and when I heard that, in the back of my mind, I see Trump just kind of leaning back and saying, "Yep." I mean, there was the plan all along. I mean,
and even if that doesn't yield whatever, like even if you say, okay, Trump, there's no way he could have seen what was coming. There's no way he could. He's not playing 4D chess, which I would agree with all that. I don't think he's some IQ 590 guy. I don't think he's playing advanced chess in that regard, where he predicted this exactly where they would land. I don't think that. Right. But I think we could all acknowledge that the fact that those countries are even having that conversation is a massive win.
It is. And, when I think of Trump in games, I think of Trump in poker. He's looking at a hand that's virtually untenable. Maybe he's got a couple of twos, and say, I'm all in. I mean,
Yeah.
so and he's a great poker player. That one that came across, there was a meme that came across, or a little one of those Facebook things that talked about at the end. It's like Trump's 10 moves ahead. No, he's not 10 moves ahead. He just knows the next move you're going to make when he says this outrageous thing. He knows the next move you're going to make, and that's all he needs to know. It's not that difficult. It's not hard.
And I mean, obviously, I don't know what I have a hypothesis, and again, there's no way I could know it from my lowly position in society, but I got to imagine when you're dealing with countries and their economies and maintaining order, that the number of variables of things that they can do is probably pretty limited.
Yeah.
It's not like there's 9,000 ways they could handle Gaza. There's probably like 12,
Right. Yeah.
And there's a good batch and a mediocre batch and a bad batch. And like, okay, if we can get them in the good or medium, like we're going to call that a win, but let's make it so they can't do the bad thing, which is what they've done so far. Basically, this is Israel and our problem to deal with, and they can just go about their merry way and put their head in whatever version of the story they're telling themselves. But I think that at that level, there's probably only a certain number of things you can do. Just like if you're doing a takeover of one country or company versus another, there's only a handful of cards they can play.
Right.
If you know what those cards are going in, you can maneuver yourself to, lead them towards making the decision you want. I gotta figure this is kind of the same way.
I'm sure it is, and I'm sure the other thing that Trump has done as a result of this is, whenever these leaders, MBS in Saudi Arabia, or any of the Qataris, whatever you call them, I'm sure the Jordanians, they have the leaders of those countries might want to do a thing, but they might not be able to do a thing because they're people. Now, what Trump gives them is plausible deniability, so they can do the thing that they probably would do anyway, just because it's in their best interest to keep that from boiling over. I mean, they don't want to take all the Palestinians. They know what kind of problem that's going to be. But now MBS can go back to his people and say, yeah, well, we got to invest $50 billion, but I don't really want to. But otherwise, Trump's going to take over Gaza. Maybe we're next.
Yeah. And I got to think that, like, you take those more hardline societies that are very anti-Western culture, very anti-United States, and if the population of those countries found out that we could have spent $50 billion to keep the U.S. out, but we didn't, and so now the U.S. is, 600 miles from us, I gotta think that might affect their popularity among their constituents.
Absolutely. Well, and I think their constituents would understand a personality like Trump, because they're very authority driven. They're very patriarchal.
It's all about power.
MBS is he's the leader, and so, but a more powerful leader says to your leader, this is what we're going to do. Now your leader, if MBS can make himself look like a hero by doing something that he wouldn't have done if he came up with the idea, if he can act on Trump's idea, then or propose an idea, well, Trump accepted our idea. I mean, it's a win for him all the way around.
Forgive my lack of education and awareness. Who is MBS?
Oh, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, who's
the Crown Prince. Okay, now I got you. Okay, yeah.
He's basically because the actual king is like 800 years old or something. So
okay, so I know who the Crown Prince is. I didn't know his name. So
they just call him MBS because it's shorter, because that's what we do. We shorten everything.
That's what we do in America. Yeah. We can't be bothered with long ethnic names. Like we gotta shorten things up.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
All right. Well, as Dave mentioned in the beginning, if you think there's something we were talking about today that we got right, we'd love to hear that. If you think there's something we talked about that is completely off base, we'd love to hear that too. Again, Dave and I are trying to explain to future generations what this moment in time is like, not through the lens of what they're going to see in a history book or videos that will be available for everyone, but kind of what's the mood and what's going on in as far as things that won't be widely reported or kept, as people undoubtedly look back at this period of time and wonder what the hell were those people thinking. So you can do that by going to unsilentpodcast.com, or Rumble has a great comment section. And with that, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be Unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.